Hi, and welcome to ICS Arabia. Um, Glad to have a special guest today, Marco Ayala. Hi, Marco. What's up?
Hello, Solomon. How are you?
Fine, and you? Pleasure to have you, really.
Actually, pleasure to be here. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for inviting me on to your ICS Arabia. I'm really excited to be your guest on your show. I've heard so much about it, and it's nice to be on.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine, and thank you for accepting the invitation.
Absolutely.
Before we begin, could you introduce yourself and tell us about your background and how did you get into OT cybersecurity?
Sure, man. I'll give you the quick rundown. I actually started out in electronics many years ago, and then I moved into the industrial equipment area, and then moved over to operations for a specialty gas company. And from there, I got into instrumentation, and that really launched my career. This was over 3 decades ago. But so I started out in instrumentation, then moved into control, and then from there safety, and then from there process historians. So I went from specialty gas to the chemical industry as an asset owner, working for a large Dutch chemical company or coatings and chemicals company with multiple business units, and then moved over from there, went to a large vendor, probably the largest in the world, as the application engineer for their distributed control system and safety system, and then moved into consulting, where I really stemmed out into the oil and gas, offshore and onshore, pipeline, midstream, all streams is the way I like to put it. And then from there, have just been moving through that, went back to the asset owner, for a little bit in mining and refining, and then just doing some other stuff and supporting, instrumentation, automation, control, everybody within the International Society of Automation. I've been a 22-year member, but I joined in 2002 initially. So I'm a senior member, ISA fellow here recently, and I'm also an ISA certified instructor for the cyber classes. I've actually been teaching the classes. We betaed them in 2015. We launched them in 2016 with ISA, and started training our National Guard on industrial control system security. But that's my journey. That's a short trip down many years of heartache, blood, toil, and tears in the industry side of it. But that's the short take.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot. You climbed it, really.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, let me just preface this, and Solomon, you can go from there. But I came from the operations and control side and maintenance, and it was in the early 2000s where I was in charge of not just the DCS, the distributed control side, but also the process historians, is where I got my first taste of cybersecurity, not by choice, but by actual incident. The company that I was working for, large company, we had a internal breach, and we were locked out of a lot of our process historians, which, as you know, are the interconnects down to the distributed control. And so we couldn't get environmental data. We were actually under the gun. So we had to reach out to our IT security people and really start understanding the security inputs and risk. And, you got to understand that Y2K area, there was not a lot of segmentation and VLANing and firewalling. And so many companies, not just my company, but we all started to get serious about security. But how I got into cyber was by actual incident, by cyber incident response.
Oh, so you saw the real thing, and
saw the real thing. Yeah.
You didn't just hear, just hearing about Stuxnet and.
Well, when IT security cannot tell you who it is within your network that's actually locking you out or connected to your systems, it's not a good sign. So But from there, that's really what stemmed and bloomed my career in cyber. Was I was really interested in securing our plant processes. From a process safety perspective, that is paramount to me and to our fellows. And so that really started that journey. I took some classes from the ICS CERT. I think my first class was in 2006, but I was an early adopter of technology and rolled out security kit and defense in depth strategy, created an IDMZ very, very early on in 2005, 2006-ish, using Verano Industrial Defender at that time. So really rolled those out, started to roll them out across the chemical plants that my business unit had, and also in Europe. And was doing some dot reporting to the CISO at the time. So it was definitely a journey, but it was one of those moments that kind of builds you and preps you and sets you for, I guess, future. And that's I've been hooked ever since. Making sure that people are doing smart things with high dollar equipment, especially when safety is involved. So I've got a slogan, a saying, but I can't say it because children might be watching or listening. So, but that's me in a nutshell, Solomon. So I don't want to steal your show, but that's it. That's all about me in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's interesting. No, it's okay. I mean, take your time and feel free to go any angle you want. I have time. It's up to you. Okay. So when I talked to you on LinkedIn, we agreed on to talk about secure deployment. Could you elaborate on this, please? Because I'm really interested to know about that.
Sure. Well, Solomon, I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the discussions around secure by design from a product's perspective. Sure. When I talk about secure by deployment, is making sure you take those secure by design products and secure by default products and make sure you're integrating them into your actual deployment. So making sure you're setting yourself up for success going into factory acceptance testing, but even much more so going into site acceptance testing. So taking those secure products, taking the secure by default, and working with your integrators or your vendors from an asset owner perspective, and really walking it through from conceptual all the way to run and maintain. So putting it into a life cycle. So the important part of it is that, having been in this industry and especially around cyber for so many years, we take a lot of things for granted, and especially trying to get the operations up and going. And a lot of times what we think is secure isn't secure by the time we get things in place and operationalized. And so we have an opportunity to really further our security enhancements and endurance by making sure that we're following through with security. So that whole secure by deployment is not new. It's just something that we've been struggling with from a control engineering perspective, from a deployment perspective, from an EPC or an engineering procurement construction company, and really making sure that we cost that into the projects, whether we're on the asset owner side or whether we're proposing this out to a client, making sure that they're actually embedding security within the proposal, within the project, all the way through. And that's the whole idea around secure by deployment, is really not just checking the box, but making sure that you're following through, making sure that the devices are secure. You have a formal way of checking that at FAT. You have a way of double checking that at SAT. The reason I say that is because I have seen where there is a delta between what was seen and accepted at FAT at SAT. So because you'll have a different group of people from, say, the OEM or the vendor that's doing the actual startup. So they may make modifications, they may make changes, they may change nodes on the network, they may disable antivirus, they may turn off firewalls to be able to get things working that are not typically, or that could be working in the field at that time, that moment in time. And you need someone there to make sure that none of that is being let down. So we talk about shields up. Well, think about, making sure that the shields aren't down once you get it out there. So that's the whole idea for me, is putting it into a life cycle of secure by deployment. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so let's discuss some of the ideas that you mentioned. Could you explain what do you mean by FAT and SAT, and what's their relationship to cybersecurity?
Sure. So traditionally, factory acceptance testing is making sure that everything that you've designed on the control system is ready to go out to the field. So think about this as your control strategies, your I/O, your inputs and outputs, your field instrumentation, the ranges in your control strategies, your graphics that are built, and really working that out to make sure that it's fundamentally meeting your actual control narratives for the asset owner. If you're the asset owner, these are your control narratives that are being met. So at traditional factory acceptance testing, this is where you're vetting and validating and verifying that your automation strategies and everything are designed properly. And this is where you can find out if there's either mistakes in code in those control strategies or the graphics, or you need to make modifications or changes. That is your point in time to be able to do your due diligence as an asset owner to make sure that the project that you're paying for to be built meets the mustard. Now, typically, security is not even a portion of that. It's not usually, or if it is, it's a bolt-on. It's usually after the fact. We'll get to it later, and it's usually a different crew that will come in and do it that I've been part of. So that is what an FAT is. Factory acceptance testing is making sure that you've met your design criteria for the project from the control to the HMI, and I lost you.
All right.
So, okay. Yeah, so from control to there you are. Okay, so from control to the design is there. And then when you get to the SAT, the site acceptance testing, you're going to have a group of people that are going to be out there to make sure that it starts up. There's no changes or modifications needed in graphics, or maybe there might be some changes needed to be done on the control strategies on the fly before you release it to operations. So that is the purpose of FAT and SAT. Where cyber comes in is actually making sure that at FAT, you're looking at all the security controls and things that you put into your RFP, your proposal, or your requirements for your cyber requirements. And that is the moment in time, the place and time to be able to test and check it. Now, a lot of the large oil and gas companies and chemical companies, for example, are pretty mature, so they have an ability to look at this and go in with a small team and be able to look at the architecture, look at the components, and go through their checklists and make sure that things, simple things like telnet is disabled, HTTP is disabled on the actual PLC, default passwords are not being used from the vendor. Just there's some simplicity, but there's also some technical advanced things that you can look for, whether application control is enabled, if system hardening and network hardening has been done on everything from the switches to the actual machines or the virtual machines, making sure that solitaire is not enabled, for example. Just some basic hygiene, but even thorough, deeper stuff that the asset owner may have in qualifying the system. And that needs to be really worked in, not at the same time as your traditional FAT, but on off hours or when the main project team is stepped away from doing their control system overview and checkout with the asset owner. You need the cyber team to come in and review that. And that could be a night crew that comes in to review those things from the company and the integrator and the OEM, and even a third party to cold eye sanity check everything from the cyber portion of it. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yep. Thank you for answering this question. Okay, so you just said that cybersecurity is not part of that. It comes after that, right?
Well,
Am I correct? Or
so there's a couple approaches to it. It can either, at least within the same time box window, before it goes out to the field, you need to be looking at the security aspects of it and not designing security at that moment in time. You, again, going back to what I was saying about life cycle, well before you get to FAT, to the factory acceptance testing, even with cyber, you need to be able to make sure that you've defined your security controls and you're walking that process through the development life cycle. So then when you get to FAT, all you're doing is you're going through and checking that the things that you prescribed are actually in application and are being met. And so that's the way you get ahead of it, not trying to create all that at FAT, because that will just create a headache and a mess. So more mature companies will actually build out the actual secure operating systems in the network, hardening before the actual control strategies and things are really deployed. In other words, build out security, then build the system on top of it. That's a great approach. I like that approach. It sure does help, especially coming in if you haven't done any requirements. Trying to bolt on solutions after the fact is going to impact your delivery to on-site and even to startup. And I've witnessed that several times working with companies, asset owners, and even being an asset owner myself, saying, well, we can't accept this. It's not very secure. And there's just too much risk in the realm of this.
Okay. So, risk assessment comes, of course. So we're doing SAT and FAT to check that if your risk is done right, like managed right? That's
well. So obviously, everything starts with a risk assessment, and I always am a fan of actually risk assessing before you design. So from conceptual to actually even going into feed, you're going to perform an RA. Typically on the process, that is a perfect time to RA from a cyber perspective, the things that are going to need to be in place, like identity management, secure control. If remote access is going to be allowed or tolerated, what is that going to look like? How is this going to connect? What safety system is going to be used? What zones? What conduits? So absolutely, in determining whether an FAT is going to be applicable, again, we don't own your risk, you do. So these are things that you have to decide as a company whether you perform them or not. But absolutely, everything starts with a risk assessment.
So what do you think about the current products in OT that they claim they have secure by design products? I've seen few products on the market.
Yeah, I think it's, I'll have to say that from a vendor perspective, it's good that we're getting components that are secure by design being developed. And that means that we are moving the needle ever so slightly, but we are, moving the needle to a better, more secure process, right? I think there still are challenges, and it's. I think that we need to still do our due diligence. Just because you get a product that is stamped, it meets this certification and it's secure by design, doesn't mean you're going to take it and directly connect it to the internet and then have some process connected to it. So you still have to do your due diligence, from risk assessment, determining your architecture and deployment of the equipment. So there's still that handle of the asset owner and the integrator that needs to happen to make sure that you're doing smart things with this secure by design product. But you also have to keep in mind that is a moment in time stamp for that secure by design product. So what's secure by design today? If I give you, this product and say, here it is, it's secure by design, and I hand it to you, and then a 0-day comes out that evening, although it's secure by design, it still has vulnerabilities. So you're going to have to put something into a life cycle. So it's great that we have secure by design. It's great that we have secure by default. That has been something that's been needed within our industry for some time now. But you, as an asset owner, still have to do something, your due diligence in deploying this out there. And that's something that does keep me up at night, is whether someone's going to take a secure by design product and say, well, it's secure by design. Why can't I connect it to a World Wide Web or public internet, or connect it to the enterprise without a firewall or IDMZ or whatever it may be, because it's secure by design, right? And so it goes back to the human aspect of doing smart things with equipment, but also being educated enough to know better as well. So those are some key aspects. I love the idea. I'm glad the vendors are going through it. And we'll see more products come out that are secure by design and meeting some certain level of criteria. And there's standards that are around that component level to be able to meet those capabilities. So yeah, I think we need to foster in new technology as it comes, but be very cognizant that what's secure today may not be secure tomorrow. So we have to put it into a life cycle.
Fully agree. I'm still in the deployment, secure deployment. I'm trying to get as many ideas that I can ask you about it. So, do you think the architecture, or the Purdue model, is valid nowadays? Especially there is the cloud, there is the IoT.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about that? From secure deployment perspective?
Well, So I think I think the Purdue is still relevant. However, there have been obviously new changes to technology, such as industrial Internet of Things, that in cloud and in edge and all the different things that have challenged traditional modeling and levels, for example. And so I think, again, it starts with risk assessment, determining what's allowable, especially when there's read-write capability from cloud or anywhere in the world into a process area. I think there needs to be some due diligence. But going back to it, I think that's the new norm in our spectrum is having, L4 or even L5 down to L2 or even L1. In our environments. And so, again, I don't own your risks, but I think there's been a lot of discussions around whether the Purdue is still relevant, and I've heard talks about the Purdue is dead. Having lived on the asset owner side, even here recently, I can tell you that yes and no. The Purdue is still very alive and active today, but it was never built around security. This is just a logical mapping on how things communicate and how you can deploy your architecture. So there's a lot of companies, a lot of large companies that are mature that have adopted such as the Purdue or the ISA 95 or ISA 99 model. But they are starting to bring in the IIoT. So thinking of it of a non-Purdue communication set. And we've seen this offshore with ROVs. We've seen this on land, obviously, with pipelines and communications. So there's different things that are allowable and tolerable. And I think that if you're doing security around those things, I think it's very important. So for me, I think both can actually be true. You can still have one and adopt the other. And I'm seeing a lot of companies do that today.
Okay. So do you think we will have a different model in the future, like secure Purdue model or something?
I think there's going to be some people that will probably work on something like that. Again, from a defense in depth strategy, it's hard to take a level approach or layered approach away when you're trying to actually put barriers around each zone or conduit. So I think maybe the standards approach by doing zones and conduits and having that perspective could be an ideal design around that, but maybe who knows? Maybe Solomon, maybe that's something that you'll work on and come up with.
Maybe I'm not sure, but maybe you're the expert. So you've been in the domain more than I did. Okay, so you are an ISA fella, right? Hello, Marco.
Yeah.
You with me? Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's froze a little bit.
You'll chop sections and do some editing for your because
Sure, I will, of course.
okay.
Of course. Right. So, I mean, you are an ISA guy, I think. You've been with ISA for a long time. Like, how many years now with them?
So I joined in 2002. I think there was a lapse, but in 2004 or 2005, I've been a continuous member, meaning I've paid every year for membership. And yeah, so I started in 2002. And that's the same year that ISA 99 was actually created. ISA 99 being the working group that had built out the 62443 standards. Which have now been moved over to IEC standards. But I started in 2002 as an ISA member, and I've been a continuous member, I think, since 2005, ever since. And I've always had a lot of love and care for the International Society of Automation, because when I started out, I had some great mentors, and they were ISA members long term. And they kind of put me on my path through fruition, and so now I'm mentoring and giving back as well as an ISA member. So
nice. Yeah, I mean, you are my second guest from ISA.
Oh,
yeah. Last time I had a mustard with me.
Steve, yeah. Steve, Steve, we do tag team training with the ISA cybersecurity course. So he and I recently did a course in Belgium, in Brussels, together, and he and I both had some amazing classes, pretty full classes. And we've also done some tag teaming with some oil and gas companies through ISA. And yeah, we're like Batman and Robin. I think I'm Batman. He could be Robin, but listening.
Okay.
But no, that's good that you had some ISA folks on. That's great.
Yeah, it's I'm really happy because I can ask you, I mean, directly, without, directly about ISA and why you put some information in the standard. Like, for example, there's a debate, and they're always criticizing or maybe approving the levels, the security level 4, level 3. Some disagree with the levels that you are classified in the standard. What's your opinion about that? I mean, why there is a disapproval and a debate about it?
Well, usually the folks that come to the debate or the disagreement are usually the ones that never say anything in any of the meetings. You have to understand these standards take years to develop. They can go through a voting process for approval. And so you take, for example, the 3-2 standard from ISA that actually helps you define zones, conduits, but do the risk assessment. It took 7 years for that standard to actually go through development, go out for approval, and then have to go back out for reapproval because people were either not satisfied. But anyway, there was a consensus that went through. So nothing gets published as a standard until it goes out for votes and gets approval. So the folks that usually come in and say, well, the security level's this, or, it's very subjective to this or that or the other, or I don't like it, either were in the working group and didn't say a word, or are usually after the fact. So I will say that there are a lot of companies that have adopted security levels, and they've been able to map it to what they define as risk. And that works. It doesn't have to be convoluted or very, fuzzy math to be able to understand your risk as an asset owner. And having been one, and in many of the people that usually are going back and pushing back on certain things such as levels and capabilities and achieved, may not have actually lived as an asset owner for a year or years. So I think there's also some subjectivity into the folks that are maybe also making statements like that. And it's not anything against them. I think, listen, it's a free world. You can have your own opinions. I will say, if you feel very strongly about not doing security level targets, then join the working group. Put your word in, have a say, help streamline it for the next revision of the standard. But keep in mind, it takes years. So it wasn't that one person or two people went and created something and pushed it out to an industry globally and it got adopted. There were vendors, there were OEMs, there were asset owners, all at the table for every standard that the ISA 99 actually publishes and goes out for vote. And there's the valid members that look at this and say, do I like that? Does that make sense? No, that doesn't make sense. I don't like it. I'm going to vote no. So these standards are out there for a reason, but there's also a reason why they go through review and they go through discussions and they get updated. And so I'll have to say that I stand strongly behind the standards as is. And I always look forward to seeing new updates to the standards. The reason why we develop security level targets is to have something in mind that can be achievable. Otherwise, what are we shooting for? Because, and I've heard this stated in many other places, that if everything is critical, then nothing is critical. So you have to prioritize security levels, just like you do safety, functional safety with criteria on SIL level, for example. And just comparing that, you want to be able to increase your security perspectives on your systems or your system under consideration for your zones in each conduit to say, is this important, and what level should we be able to apply this to based on our own risk matrix or our own risk criteria as an asset owner. And I can tell you, I've been living as an asset owner and having actually been as a vendor and been as a consultant. At the end of the day, or at the beginning of the week, it's the asset owner that actually owns the risk. So it's up to them to determine what the security level targets should be and be able to bring in components and hardware and equipment from vendors with the Secure by Design, meeting the criteria to be able to achieve those security level targets for those zones and conduits that you defined. And so many times I think it's a struggle. I do see engineering, procurement, construction companies that try to define the risk for the asset owner, and that's not correct. It's the asset owner that needs to be able to define it. It's their risk. So great facilitators, great facilitation in process hazard analyses, for example, and HAZOPs and LOPAs, hazardous analysis. Those are the types of assessments that you want to go through to help determine what security level targets you should be. Otherwise, if everything is critical, then nothing is. So again, it's an ability to be able to assign a numerical number to be able to say we are doing something. Now, think about this from an investigator's perspective. Okay. If there's an accident, if there is a loss of containment, if there is a fire explosion and there is people that are injured or killed, or environmental catastrophe that impacts even areas and regions, and even companies, their own persona, right? It impacts them on the stock market. They had a major fire, they had a major explosion. If you're an investigator or you're an inspector coming in saying, show me that you're actually doing process safety, prove to me as an investigator that you are actually doing safety instrumented levels or safety instrumented functions, for your safety system. Great. That calls out to say, show me that you've done a risk assessment and you've actually defined what those risks are. If you go through this and you're telling me as an inspector that, hey, we did a vulnerability scan and here's our deal and here's our report, that's not a risk assessment. If I say, well, what was your security level? Did it meet or achieve, for that zone or that conduit? Show me what you did there to be able to define what that risk was. And if you say, well, here's my vulnerability assessment, that's not going to cut it. Mm-hmm. So it gives you as an asset owner the ability to be able to not only map and monitor and roadmap your security environment from a life cycle approach, but it also arms you with saying that we are doing something. We're not neglecting security. Security is tied to safety. And so if I'm an inspector coming in and you show me a risk assessment such as a 3-2, and you're trying to achieve a security level target of 2, and you're doing that through a vector, or at least doing due diligence, I'm going to be really, really happy that you're doing that. I may still find some flaw in it, but you yourself as an asset owner are pulling some of that subjectivity out by proving to me that you have a process in place. And that's what follows through with process safety management. So that's my long answer to your short question.
Yeah, I like long answers, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah.
Take your time.
I talk about this all day long with a lot of different people that have different perspectives and different equations. And that's why I also keep an open mind with different types of risk assessments or assessments, such as Idaho National Lab. They have a consequence-driven cyber-informed engineering perspective that still uses math, but it's a 4-phased approach that includes targeting, right? Still goes through the same similar process of determining what is high impact, what is high consequence, and what are you doing as a security controls perspective at the very tail end. And a lot of it's all aligns and maps to the standards, and all aligns and maps to the National Institute of Standards cybersecurity framework.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm not familiar with the US and how it works and the OT field. Who would be the inspector in the US? From which organization normally?
So there's the Chemical Safety Board that will typically come in post-event, but the occupational safety and so OSHA is one of the regulatory bodies, and we also have the Environmental Protection Agency, which is the EPA. So those have the regulatory strong arm stick of the U.S. Right.
So they have the stick.
Yeah, they give citations, and they have the ability to shut an asset or a site down if they are out of compliance. Wow. Absolutely.
Oh, so are they government, or they're backed up by the government?
No, they're government. They are government. They're government. They're backed up by the government. They are .gov, as we say.
All right. What about CISA? Is it part of them, or it's different?
So CISA is not a regulatory body. So the CISA it's really an outreach within the government. They are government, but they help support industry. They provide security guidance. They provide alerts, advisories. They provide training. They're really an outreach arm and supportive mechanism of the Department of Homeland Security. Now, DHS in themselves, with TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, they are also a regulatory body, so they have regulatory control. But CISA themselves, as per their last discussion, is they're not a regulatory agency. They help promote cyber and physical security and operational integrity. So that's their approach there.
Nice.
Yeah. What about in Saudi Arabia? I know that you have your KSA regulatory requirements. A lot of this honestly says the same things when it comes down to, governance, identify, detect, protect, respond, recover. So these are all, whatever government or agency or standard, all these things map to those tiered categories. So I'm sure that KSA or the kingdom has their regulatory standards and has shoulds and shalls or must type verbiage in their approach.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia. I'm from Kuwait, but I know a little about Saudi Arabia. They have their own standard.
Got it.
OTCC, I think it's called, and they I think it's mandatory. And I heard from friends there are fines for factories who don't conform and don't even follow the guidelines. So that's what I heard.
But can't either in Kuwait can't the government come in and issue tickets or and even shut them down, right?
For cybersecurity, not yet.
Okay.
Maybe for other things, yes. Maybe for the factory acceptance and
So,
that.
yes, let me make a clarifying point. Is for cybersecurity here in the U.S., they can't shut you down either. So I want to
Okay.
make that clarifying point is that from a safety perspective, an environmental perspective, they can shut you down, right? But from a cyber, we are in the same. We are in the
Okay.
same. Yeah, that hasn't. We haven't went that far yet.
Yeah, I misunderstood you. I thought they in the US they shut you down if you don't have a. All right.
No, they'll fine you. They for the ones that are regulated, they can fine you. There could be impacts there for industry that's under specific regulatory, like for the power and utilities. There's NERC-CIP. So we're still seeing. I think here in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll see more regulatory. But I don't ever see a moment where if you don't have a cybersecurity plan, or you have a plan, but it's not great. I don't see where the government's going to come in from a private perspective into a private sector company and shut you down. I think they could just probably make life miserable by issuing tickets or strong arming that perspective. But I'm glad we covered that. I wasn't stating that previously. Again, you have to understand, I come from the operations side. So when I say, OSHA and EPA can shut you down, I'm strictly talking about from a process safety and process environmental perspective, just like probably in your country as well.
Yeah, of course, because it's been a long time. They've been doing this for decades. So they're more mature now in this regard.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Well, I was reading about your LinkedIn page, and I found out that you worked with maritime. What did you do in the maritime? Was it security work? Was it engineering work? What was it?
A little bit of both, but mainly ports and terminals. So even gas loadout terminals, LNG facilities, risk assessments. Some design as well, and offshore. So offshore drilling, and production. So everything from subsea to topsides, especially on the offshore stuff, more on the risk assessment. So I'm credentialed. I can fly offshore anywhere in the world, and perform risk assessments and report outs for those. So I'm very, very familiar with the offshore space, and so I'm one of the several that enjoy going offshore to those cities and looking at the systems.
And what about cybersecurity in maritime? Did you do anything with it? Did you?
Yeah. So the risk assessment. So obviously the risk assessments and it's a big piece. And I'm also on the Area Maritime Security Committee, which is a sworn-in role to the Coast Guard for the Outer Continental Shelf. So that's covering large vessels, workboats, and drill ships and platforms for the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, for example. Yeah. So that's cybersecurity, directly cybersecurity and threat intelligence.
Ah, cool.
I've been doing it for some time.
And how mature is the maritime industry? I mean, is it new? I mean, from cybersecurity perspective.
We have a ways to go, and that's on a global scale. That's not speaking U.S. That's on a global scale, and I think, it's on a global scale. And there's a lot of industry organizations and regulatory, such as the IMO, that's out there, and Coast Guard has come up with its final rule and some other circulars. So it's getting better. It is lagging. We're in a lot of the industries outside of power and electricity. I would say that we are still on the lagging industry side, but we are doing better. And a lot of that stems from people adopting standards. If you look at the maritime space, if specifically DNV has some GL guidance documents for their classification. For example, ABS does as well for the American Bureau of Shipping. And a lot of that stems from the IS 899 working group, the 62443 standards, is part of their actual criteria for their own guidance documents for their vessel owners, their customers, and their classifications. So we're seeing that start to really grow globally, and I think, the next 5-10 years, I think we'll be in a much better place from a security standpoint. But we have to be very mindful that so will our adversaries, and the adversaries with cyber capabilities. They will always have an edge as well. So it's not an arms race, but I think we're getting better, and I think maritime is coming of age, and we're seeing that as well with new ship builds. So there is a requirement. I think it's E26 and E27, or ER 26 and 27, that has requirements for new vessels, new ships being built to have security baked into the design and to the deployment of the solution. So we talked about FAT and SAT. So ideally, if you build it into the ship, you should be able to check it at the vessel checkout, and once it gets underway, as we say in the maritime industry.
Yeah, I heard a podcast last week about a guy who has a business in the US, and they fix and pen test, pen test the cruises, cruise ships, because they are connected to vendors remotely, and this is like a weakness, this perspective. So
yeah, I think he has it's probably not a unique perspective. I think it's a well-known perspective, but we have pen testers out there that can get in and show that things can be accessible. That's why it's so super important to really understand your risk and identify if this remote access for these specific vendors is a requirement, or can it be done to where it's there when you need it, but it can be shut off when you don't need it, isolated, in other words. So it's not a 24/7, 365 connection to someone somewhere behind a keyboard that you either know or you don't know. So that's great. Yeah, I think we are seeing it. There's some other really good pen testers out of the UK that are pretty sharp. Pen Test Partners is another good group, and there's a lot of great talent out there at other companies, and even with the maritime side, ABS and DNV and many other groups have got their own capabilities and even their own security operations centers. So you asked about, is the maritime, is it lacking? But I think we're getting to a point where we're at least at a monitoring stage. So it's that crawl, walk, run perspective. And I think we're in that crawl to walking a little bit on the more mature organizations. And I think regulatory is really pushing that needle as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question. I want your opinion about this. Say a country, any country, they don't have their own national standards, like the IEC, the ISA 62443, and they want to build their own. If you were a consultant, how would you tell them? What's the roadmap? How would you help? What would you tell them to build their own, if they can, of course?
Yeah. So, I am a fan of the standards approach. So the 2-1 standard talks about ISMS, but also the cyber management system. So, having a 3-ring binder, that would be one way of looking at it. If they wanted to get a good idea, look at the 2-1 standard. But you don't need that. You can look at the National Institute of Standards and look at the cybersecurity framework, determine what standards you want to use, and really look at those categories, those tiers and categories for determining what you have. So identify, detect, protect, respond, recover, for example, and mapping those into your policies, procedures, and your governance model. So that would be my approach. I teach the ISA courses, so I'm a little biased. So the 2-1 tells you exactly how to actually build out your cyber management system, and I would say that those are great. And if you already have an ISMS, which is more on the IT side, you could use that as well, but formulate it to where it's really on the control systems and OT perspective and IIoT. Those are also great starts as well.
Do you think it's doable?
Well, I was going to say, if I was a consultant, I would say, well, you pay me and I'll tell you. So
do you think it's difficult, or is it doable? I mean,
there is a time commitment to doing it right. So people think just having a policy and procedure is their actual strategy, and it's not. And so you need to focus on it. You really need to consider this as a big 3-ring binder that you keep on your bookshelf, where you can go and say, well, what are we doing for incident response? What are we doing for access control? What are we doing for remote access? What is our training requirements for our employees? What are our training requirements for our vendors and our integrators? So having this, and again, the 2-1, and I think the newest 2-1 also reflects on some of this and allows you to use your own ISMS. But the idea there is to compartmentalize and have that book of books that you can refer to as your requirement piece for your program. Because to truly have a good, repeatable and program that you can learn from, you need to have a process. And that's not a simple policy and procedure. Your program needs to have policies and procedures, but you need to have that, I like to call it your digital 3-ring binder. Especially if you're a director or a manager of a team and it's your responsibility for operational technology, you need that. You need to not only have your corporate buy-in, but you also be able to have something that is living and breathing that you can reflect on annually or every 2 years and say, do we need to update this? Hey, we're doing this new cloud thing. We need a document in there. We need some policies, procedures around it to add it to your governance model. That's the whole idea of that. So I think there are some tools out there now. There's also some companies out there that have used artificial intelligence to. Yeah. They're definitely out there that could actually, you could probably say, create a governance model for ICS and OT and bare bones it, make it very simplified for someone that's just starting out. I'm sure that it will come back with probably some very interesting terms. It might give you some structure, but you're probably, as an asset owner, you're probably going to have to make sure that you're filling in the right areas that make sense for you. That's the biggest key piece there. So use it while you can, but just know there's flaws in even what AI comes back and reflects with. And there's some documented things like someone was talking about, and there's some discussions around hallucinations. Like it'll just create fluff that makes it kind of sounds great, but it really is irrelevant. So it fills in the gaps, and you don't want that as part of your program. You want to build it from the ground up. Use people, use tools, use industry consultants that have done it, been around the block like myself, like yourself, I'm sure, that have created programs and have come in programs that have been ineffective. In other words, you may not have to start from scratch, but you need to be very crafty to help design around culture. So.
Yeah, like you said, you need a team like engineers, maybe cybersecurity people, experts.
Well, that's it. And so you've got to have buy-in, and it's not just a top-down. It needs to be from a bottom-up approach. So if it's something that your instrument techs and your control engineers are not going to follow, they've got to embrace it. They've got to really say that they're going to commit to it. So if they're designing it, they're a part of the discussion from a corporate level. You have a better chance of having that adoption, not just from that facility, but across your fleet of sites, as opposed to just trying to push it down from an IT perspective. And so I think you'll get a lot better flow that way.
Okay. So before we leave you, Marco. Uh, uh, I noticed you have an organization called InfraGard.
Yes.
Yeah. Could you tell us about it, please? I'm interested to know about it, really.
Yeah, InfraGard is a U.S.-based program. It is sponsored by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and it's a collaboration with asset owners, operators, individuals that are vetted and qualified to be able to receive information and collaborate with the FBI on threats and knowledge base that are critical to our country, right, to our nation. So, when you get alerts from, say, a CCERT or some type of CERT, you'll get a TLP clear. So we get, as a community, TLP greens, TLP ambers, well before the general public will receive those. So we're a vetted community sponsored by the FBI. We collaborate, and it's citizen based, but many of us, all of us, are vetted to be able to be part of the program. So I'm president of the Houston chapter, which is the second largest in the U.S. And we have basically all 16 critical sectors in our area of responsibility, our AOR, including nuclear. So we have energy, oil, gas, chemical, maritime, ports, terminals, transportation. We have it all. We even have medical industry. We have the largest children's hospital area in the world. So it's very critical. Protection of these systems in our area and in the U.S. Is why the InfraGard program is there. So CISA is also a collaboration partner that acknowledges and also supports InfraGard. And so I'm very proud to lead the second largest chapter in the United States.
Are you for the founder, or who founded it?
Oh, no, that was founded by a group, I want to say out of Milwaukee, but many years ago with the FBI. And yeah, there's a whole history, so you can go and you can research the history of how it was created, but it's created by the FBI, sponsored by the FBI. But I think it was formulated up in the Midwest states initially, pre-2000, I think, at least almost 30 years ago. Yeah.
So the idea behind it was for cooperation and between asset owners and the government. That's it. Okay.
That's it. And because there's a feeling that typically it's always one way from the government. You tell them, they never tell you anything. Well, this fosters collaboration to where they're sharing threats and information specific to the sectors, even more so than your general public information. So that means a lot, right? And so especially if you're part of critical industry and getting those timely alerts on things that the general public doesn't know about, that gives you an ability to secure your systems or be aware to do some additional measures to protect your infrastructure.
Yeah, I like the concept, because I heard you have some water facilities that they don't have the resources to do cybersecurity like the oil sector. So
right.
If they join, you will see these. Yeah.
Water, wastewater, utilities, all the different. Yeah, we have folks from all walks of life, from all critical infrastructure that are part of the InfraGard team.
Yeah, I like the concept. I mean, we don't have it in Kuwait. Maybe it would be a good idea to replicate the experience.
I'm sure that would be a wonderful thing for you all to do.
Yes, because
I will tell you, it has helped us protect our critical infrastructure, to be able to get timely information, early warning indicators. That has, even post 9/11, helped us.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't provide example, but because of reasons. But I will say that it has helped. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I think I noticed before I close with you that you are a member of many organizations and memberships you have yourself, such as CISA, and I can't remember all, but I read them. That what
I
did
keep
may I ask you? Did they ask you to join them, or you joined them?
So with ISA, I joined initially. With InfraGard, I was encouraged to join, and later not pressured, but encouraged to become a sector chief, and then encouraged to go for vote to become president, which was a voted in position. So those I joined, and with the Area Maritime Security Committee. That was one that I was asked because I do a lot of offshore, and especially from a control systems perspective, I understand the systems that are in those environments quite well. Yeah, especially coming from the control systems background. So it really made sense, and so I would say it's a blend. Some I volunteered for, some that I was asked.
Nice. I'm sure this adds a lot. I mean, both sides to change, to exchange experience and value between you and them.
I believe so. I believe so. I'm all about sharing wealth of knowledge. I don't like to be a silo or a pillar of information. It's better that to better secure our systems, it's better to collaborate. So,
nice. It's really been a pleasure, really, to have you today. I really enjoyed your conversation.
I enjoyed the conversation too, Solomon. I thank you for having me on, and feel free to reach out anytime. And if I'm ever in your area, I'll make sure to reach out to you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you also. It's my pleasure, really, to have you, and thank you for sharing your experience with ICS Arabia.
Happy to do so.
Yeah, so that's it, I think, folks, and would like to thank Marco for his time and his valuable information, and catch you later. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.